By the time summer settled over Lake Harmony, Minnesota, the mornings by the lake no longer felt empty. The waters still shimmered under the rising sun, the ducks still drifted in lazy circles. The old maple tree still leaned over the weathered bench as if guarding it. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Eleanor Hayes no longer came to the bench only to remember what she had lost. Now she came to see who might be there. Sometimes it was Lucy, arriving in those same bright purple rain boots even when it wasn't raining, always carrying questions bigger than her age. Sometimes it was Sarah, pushing little Noah in the stroller, dark circles under her eyes, but a little more light in her smile than before. And sometimes it was just Eleanor, the lake, and the quiet kind of peace that doesn't ask for anything. It became a rhythm, a gentle one. And after so many years of silence, Eleanor found herself grateful for rhythm, because grief had taught her something strange. Silence can be comforting, but too much silence can begin to sound like loneliness. One warm June morning, Eleanor stood in her kitchen staring at a bowl of bananas that had gone soft on the counter. Walter used to hate wasting food. He would look at spotted bananas like they were a personal challenge. "Banana bread," he'd always say, "that's what these are asking to become." The memory made her smile. For a long moment, Eleanor just stood there, looking at the bananas, the flour canister, the old mixing bowl, the recipe cards stained with years of fingerprints. She hadn't baked in a long time. Not really, not since Walter died. She had made casseroles when people came over. She had warmed store-bought muffins for Melissa when she visited. But actual baking, measuring, mixing, waiting for the house to fill with warmth, that belonged to another version of herself, a version she wasn't sure still existed. Still, she reached for the bowl. By the time the banana bread was in the oven, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and memory. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. It felt lived in, almost as if Walter might walk in at any moment, sniff the air, and say, "Now that smells like home." Eleanor leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. "Don't get used to it," she whispered to the memory of him. "I'm not baking every day." But when the loaf came out golden and warm, she wrapped half of it in a dish towel, placed it in a basket, and took it to the bench. Lucy arrived 10 minutes later. She took one bite, widened her eyes dramatically, and announced, "This is way better than school lunch." Sarah laughed so suddenly she almost spilled her coffee. "Well," she said, "that's not exactly a high standard." "It is to me," Lucy replied. Eleanor laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came more easily now. And just like that, banana bread became a new tradition. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor baked more. Blueberry muffins, oatmeal cookies, apple cake. Nothing fancy, nothing from a cookbook, just the old family recipes she'd once made without thinking and had since tucked away with the grief. She started bringing extras to the bench. Lucy expected it. Sarah appreciated it more than words could say. Even Noah, now old enough to wave his hands excitedly at the sight of a muffin, seemed to understand that Eleanor's basket meant good things. One morning, as Lucy sat on the bench swinging her legs, she asked the kind of question only children ask without warning. "Why do you live alone?" Sarah immediately looked horrified. "Lucy!" "What?" Lucy asked innocently. "I'm just asking." Eleanor smiled softly. "It's all right." Lucy looked up at her, waiting. Eleanor took a slow breath. "My husband died 3 years ago." Lucy's face changed in an instant. Her expression softened in that pure, unfiltered way children do when they realize someone is hurting. "Oh," she said quietly. Then she leaned a little closer and asked, "Were you really, really in love?" Sarah covered her face. "Lucy, sweetheart." But Eleanor's eyes had already filled with a gentle kind of light. "Yes," she said, "really, really." Lucy nodded, as if this confirmed something important about the universe. "My dad doesn't live with us anymore," she said. "Mom says that doesn't mean he doesn't love us, but it feels weird." Sarah went still. For a moment, Eleanor could see the young mother tense the way people do when a truth they've been trying to manage suddenly steps into the open. Eleanor placed a hand over Lucy's small one. "Sometimes love changes shape," she said gently, "and that can feel strange, but strange doesn't always mean broken forever." Lucy considered that. Then she asked, "Did your husband still love you after he died?" Sarah let out a soft breath, caught somewhere between sadness and disbelief at her daughter's questions. Eleanor looked out at the lake. The water moved in slow silver ripples beneath the morning light. "Yes," she said at last, "I think real love stays, even when people can't." Lucy seemed satisfied. She returned to eating her muffin. But Sarah looked at Eleanor with quiet gratitude. There are some conversations only children can begin, and some truths adults only hear when a child asks the question first. As the days grew longer, Sarah began staying later after Lucy wandered off to inspect bugs, chase birds, or ask Noah deeply important questions he was too young to answer. Sometimes Sarah and Eleanor sat in silence. Other times Sarah talked, really talked, about the divorce, about the shame, about how hard it was to start over in your 30s when you thought your life would look completely different by now. "I feel like I failed," Sarah admitted one morning, staring at the lake while Noah napped in the stroller. "And I know that sounds dramatic, but everyone around me is moving forward. Careers, marriages, houses, vacations, and I'm back in my hometown with 2 kids living in my mother's old guest room, trying not to cry in the grocery store." Eleanor listened, not the impatient kind of listening people do while waiting for their turn to speak, the real kind, the kind Walter used to give her. "You didn't fail," Eleanor said quietly. Sarah laughed bitterly. "That's kind, but it's not true." Eleanor shook her head. "No, what's not true is thinking survival is failure." Sarah looked at her. Eleanor continued, "Leaving what hurts you, especially when it once looked like love, that's not failure, that's courage." The words seemed to hit Sarah harder than either of them expected. Her eyes filled. She turned away quickly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to get emotional." Eleanor smiled gently. "This is a bench by a lake. Emotional is basically the dress code." That made Sarah laugh through tears. And when she laughed, something loosened. Some pain when spoken aloud loses its power to own the room. One Saturday in July, Melissa came to visit from Chicago. As always, she arrived with grocery bags Eleanor didn't ask for, and concern Eleanor pretended not to notice. But this time, something was different. When Melissa stepped into the house, she stopped. "Mom," she said slowly, looking around the kitchen, "did you bake?" Eleanor tried to sound casual. "Maybe." Melissa looked at the cooling rack full of blueberry muffins and smiled in genuine surprise. Wow! That single word carried more emotion than most speeches. Because Melissa knew what baking meant, it meant something in Eleanor had woken up. At lunch, Eleanor told her about Sarah and Lucy and Noah, about the mornings at the bench, about Lucy's questions and Sarah's tired eyes, and the way Noah clapped when ducks got too close. Melissa listened carefully. Then she set down her fork and studied her mother. "You're different," she said. Again with that. Melissa smiled. "No, really, you are. How?" Her expression softened. "You sound present." The words settled between them. Present. Not just alive, not just surviving. Present. Eleanor hadn't realized how long she had been moving through life like a ghost in her own home. That evening, Melissa asked if they could walk to the lake. So they did. The sky was painted in soft orange and pink. The air smelled like cut grass and summer water. When they reached the bench, Lucy was already there, kneeling in the dirt, collecting what she called special rocks. Sarah waved from a few feet away. Melissa looked from the little family by the lake to her mother, and in that moment something changed in her too. For years, Melissa had worried that grief had taken more than her father. She had worried it had taken her mother too. But now, watching Eleanor laugh at something Lucy said, watching her bend down to help Noah hold a smooth stone, Melissa saw what she hadn't dared to hope for. Her mother was still here, still herself. Not the same, but still here. Later that night, after Lucy and Sarah left, Melissa sat with Eleanor on the bench as the lake darkened into evening. "I used to feel guilty," Melissa said softly. Eleanor turned to her. "For what?" For living far away, for not being here enough after Dad died, for having my own life when yours felt like it had stopped. Eleanor's chest tightened. Oh, sweetheart. Melissa stared at the water. I kept thinking maybe if I had pushed harder, maybe if I had made you move to Chicago, maybe if I had stayed longer. Eleanor reached for her daughter's hand. You could not have grieved for me, she said gently. Melissa's eyes filled. I know, I just hated seeing you disappear. Eleanor squeezed her hand. I know. The two women sat in silence for a while. Then Eleanor said the truest thing she had learned. Grief doesn't mean we stop loving life. Sometimes it just means we need longer to find our way back to it. Melissa leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, neither of them felt like they had to fix the other.